This is Optimal Living Daily, episode 1985, an excerpt from the book, Effortless, Make It Easy to Do What Matters, by McKeown, and I'm Justin Malik. Welcome to Optimal Living Daily, or the OLD podcast, where I read to you from some of the best blogs I can find and get permission from. And again, today, I'm actually reading from a book, and I'll keep this intro short and tell you about the author right after the excerpt. So for now, let's get right to it and start optimizing your life. An excerpt from the book, Effortless, Make It Easy to Do What Matters, by McKeown. Sam sat rocking his sleeping 3-year-old son. The room, which earlier was a flurry of games and activity, was now scattered with half-built Lego towers and puzzle pieces. Despite the mess, it was the most content Sam could remember feeling in a long time. Like most of us, work had been creeping into Sam's home life even before the pandemic. Now that he was working solely from home, those once blurred lines were now completely erased. Phone calls, late-night emails, and marathon Zoom meetings became the norm. Sam wasn't working from home. He was living at work. As this became clear, he tried to reestablish boundaries, pledging to finish work by 5 p.m., but his cell phone continued to ring, so he committed to silencing his phone, but the urge to check his phone, just in case, was a constant temptation. Finally, Sam reached his breaking point and decided he had to take more drastic measures. Not only would he leave his home office at 5 p.m., but he would set an email bounce-back message explaining he had finished work for the day and would return all requests the next morning. Instead of silencing his work cell phone, he turned it off. He asked his team to only call his personal cell phone for urgent items. When the clock struck 5 p.m., Sam made himself unavailable for work and available for everything else. The difference was remarkable. He felt less anxious. He was more present with his wife, and children were better. He found time to relax and recharge. And it wasn't just his personal life that improved. Sam found he began to enjoy his work more. He made better decisions and found solutions he had otherwise missed. He couldn't believe it had taken him this long to make these simple yet powerful changes. Investing in the long tail of time management. If you're like me, you can relate to Sam's story. Why do so many of us put up with problems, big and small, for so much longer than we have to? Maybe because on any given day, it usually takes less time to manage a problem than to solve it. In Sam's case, it was easier to respond in the moment to every problem or request that came up than to establish boundaries and worry about disappointing others by being unavailable. When we look at the equation from a longer-term perspective, however, our calculation changes. Once we add up the cumulative costs of the time and frustration from today, plus tomorrow, plus hundreds of tomorrows after that, suddenly it makes sense to invest in solving the problem once and for all. Our time and energy are the most valuable assets we have in this life. Taking steps to do what I call protect the asset by severing his work from his personal life was an absolute bargain for Sam. A few minutes worth of courage and effort prevented hundreds of future frustrations. This is the long tail of time management. When we invest our time in actions with a long tail, we continue to reap the benefits over a long period. Sometimes we get so used to irritations, it doesn't even occur to us to do anything about them. Even if we are bothered by them and we complain about them, we still don't really see them as a problem worth fixing. But what we often fail to recognize is that some tasks that seem not worth it in the moment may save us 100 times the time and aggravation over the long run. To break this habit, ask yourself, number 1, what is a problem that irritates me repeatedly? Number 2, what is the total cost of managing that over several months or years? And number 3, what is the next step I can take immediately in a few minutes to move towards solving it? Once you start asking these questions, you'll start noticing the small actions you can take now to make your life easier in the future. The surprising power of striking at the root. Only when we commit to really solving the problem will we begin to make progress. Henry David Thoreau once wrote, quote, "There are 1,000 hacking at the branches of evil to one who is striking at the root," end quote. When we're merely managing a problem, we're hacking at the branches. To prevent the problem before it even arises, we should strike at the root. If you spend a lot of time hacking at the branches, you may have become good at it. But if that is all you are doing, the problem will keep coming back to haunt you. It is merely being managed, never solved. When we really look, we can see examples of this approach everywhere. A doctor who treats a heart problem through years of medication, followed by highly invasive surgery, instead of encouraging a patient to eat right and exercise. An employee who repeatedly apologizes for completing a project late, rather than improving their processes so the project is done on time. A student who is exhausted from always pulling all-nighters before an assignment is due, rather than blocking off time to work on assignments every day for a week before they are due. Or a parent who bemoans having to tidy up after their children every day, instead of reinforcing a positive habit around tidying up. What about you? Are there any recurring problems or frustrations in your life or work? Rather than simply hacking at the branches, try striking at the root. While the pandemic has forever changed how we work and live, we have the power to use those changes to reshape our reality. As we begin to emerge into a post-pandemic world, we have a rare opportunity to rethink not only how we work, but also how we can design a life that isn't consumed by work. Striking at the root of our problems and making long-tail investments in protecting the asset will make sure it's a life we want to go back to. You just listened to an excerpt from the book, Effortless, Make It Easy to Do What Matters, by Greg McKeown. And I'll tell you about him in just a sec, but first, have you tried those meditation apps but couldn't keep the routine? Tired of restarting your fitness goals? Let Made For help you build lasting, positive changes from the inside out so you can feel like your best self. This is a really cool program. Made For is a better way to create new habits that benefit your body and mind. Each month, you receive a kit with a 21-day challenge with one small action to do every day that you easily integrate into your normal routine. Sounds like something we just heard in this excerpt, doesn't it? No apps, screens, or devices required, which is one of my favorite parts about it. Made For uses neuroscience and positive psychology to support positive habits around gratitude, mental clarity, movement, and so much more. Focus on one theme each month to help you achieve your fullest, happiest life over the course of 10 months. It's the wellness program you only need to do once. Right now, Made For is offering our listeners 15% off your order with promo code OLD. Payment is flexible, and this promotion applies whether you order an intro box or the full program. Go to getmadefor.com and take control of your well-being and use promo code OLD for 15%. That's getmadefor.com, promo code OLD. And thank you to Greg. Greg McKeown is a speaker, best-selling author, and host of the popular podcast, What's Essential. His work has been covered by the New York Times, Fast Company, Fortune, Politico, and Inc. He's been interviewed on NPR, NBC, Fox, and The Steve Harvey Show, and is among the most popular bloggers for LinkedIn. He's also a young global leader for the World Economic Forum. McKeown's New York Times bestselling book, Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less, has sold more than 1 million copies worldwide. Originally from London, England, he now lives in California with his wife Anna and their 4 children. So while he does write on LinkedIn, it's a bit trickier for us to get permission to narrate his work from there, so I've never had a chance to read his articles to you, but I was really excited to get permission to share an excerpt from his book because he's been widely quoted on this podcast. You might have recognized his name. I know I did instantly. And I've heard great things about his other book, Essentialism. So thank you to Greg for letting us share this excerpt today. You can find Effortless pretty much wherever you get your books. We'll leave it there for today. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you for being here and listening to me and for subscribing to the show. And I'll be back tomorrow where your optimal life awaits.